everybody. I'm Mr. Jude and I'm onto Abanet. Today I'm going to come up with another very interesting video. If you want to know more about all my videos, you can visit my YouTube channel, Abanet, youtube.com/Abanet Solutions. Here you have a lot of videos. I've done some videos on KPI, ZTE, Net Numen, terms investigation, discovery, KPI analysis, and the rest of it. And today, I'm going to talk about 16 things every telecom KPI engineer should know. This video is very important for, especially for those of you who are still doing drive tests, and for those of you who have been analyst engineers, I mean a log file analyst engineers, but you want to improve your skill in KPI, how to do KPI optimization, to do proper analysis and come up with suggestions on how to improve the network. So, but today I'm focusing more on 16 basic things you should know. Even if you want to do KPI engineers, this is very important. These skills are very important for you to prosper very well when it comes to KPI optimization. So these 16 things which I'm going to point out today are very important, and you should always have them at your fingertip. Okay, so we start. First thing every KPI engineer must know how to do is you must have Excel skill, how to do pivot charts to um, be able to present proper reports based on your work on a particular KPI which you have improved and the improvements, to showcase your improvement. So normally, if I'm training people on telecoms KPI engineering, I usually start with teaching you how to prepare reports, because your report is actually what is going to sell your work. One thing is to do proper analysis, and the second thing is to prepare very good reports that you'll be able to um, send out to your manager or your team lead, or whoever is supposed to see how you'll be able to approach. So I'll give you an example of this. This is a site with three cells that is experiencing a experienced availability problem on this day, 25th of December 2017. And you can see how it came down and how it got up. So you should be able to know how to prepare this kind of reports. If you want to, if you are doing this availability for a particular site, to put the site name here, G0329, and you should be able to know how to put out callouts at this location of improvement and the rest of this. Is just a sample. I mean, for all KPIs, you will always prepare this kind of Excel reporting, which we normally send out to show how KPI was getting bad, you check the trend, and what you've done to improve it, and how you were able to improve it. So, KPI skill is the first, I mean, Excel skill is the first thing you need to know if you want to be a good KPI engineer. Okay, secondly, we want to talk about counters. Every system have what we call counters that report back statistical data which we use to make up KPI. So, for instance, just want to give you an example of it. For instance, we I just want to give you an analogy of what I mean. Let's say this is a road, and these are people trying to come inside this door. Okay, this is a door, and you have like so many people try to enter the door. This is the resource of the network, and these are people that have been able to gain entrance. They already have a radio resources assigned to them. So I can put one counter counting the number of people that got rejected, counting the number of people that were successful, counting the number of attempts, different counters. So for instance, if I want to check my success rate, my success here is simply saying success, my KPI success rate uh, is simply equal to the number of successful people and the number of attempts. So what we are saying in essence is, says for instance, we had 10 attempts. In other words, to gain entrance into this door, 10 people attempted, 8 people were successful, and 2 people rejected. So one counter is going to give me the number of attempts a particular counter is doing it. Another counter is telling me the number of people that were successful, while another counter is telling me the number of rejection. So if I want to check the success rate, the KPI of this site is simply the number of successful people, for success, I mean, the number of successful people, which is 8, divided by the number of attempts, which is 10, and multiply this value by 100 over 1. So the KPI here is simply 80%. Okay, so I can say there is 80% success here. So counters are specifically returning statistical data, which we will use to um, which if we make up in formula we'll be able to have a KPI. So there are so many counters in the network. For instance, you have like this counter, the Ericsson counter, and counters varies from vendor to vendor. They do similar work, but they may have different name in different vendors. So this counter is meant to return number of time sell was down automatically, which is not manually, but this is meant to return for manually. Okay, normal release speed. Different counters exist in the network, but a combination of this counter, which is put in formula, will give you the KPI of the network. Okay, so you need to know about these counters. Number three, you need to know about formulas. Like I said before, form a combination of counters in a formula form way. Like if I want to check a sell of unavailability, I will be putting up some counters together to give me, and this is RRC setup success rate is 100% times this counter over this counter minus this counter. So one of the things every KPI engineer should do and should know is formulas. You should know counters and how to combine counters and give me formulas, because it is this formulas combination that will give you the KPI. Okay, so it's very very important. Okay, number four, every KPI engineer must be able to do queries. If you want to learn further about queries, you have different tools for different vendors. For Ericsson, they use ENIC, desktop intelligence. For ZTE, they use NetNewman. Um, Huawei have U2000 to 3000 and the rest of it. So normally what we query is KPI, and this KPI we query, we must have put in the formula in the software which we use to do queries. Okay, I did some videos where I taught how to do queries for tele under ZTE Numen. So this video is available on my channel. You can easily visit my channel to see this video yourself. If you come this place, you can see all about NetNewman, where I did some queries. So you should know how to do queries, because it is when you query KPI, it will bring out statistical data in the form of these Excel sheets, and you'll be able to do your analysis to prescribe solutions, and be able to talk about why there is a problem on the network. Okay. Next thing is parameters. Parameters are set of values which you set on Excel on cells of a network to behave in a particular format. In other words, when you set a parameter on a cell, the behavior of a cell is dependent on the kind of parameter you set for it. For instance, the power of a cell to shoot far distance or very short distance is dependent on the power parameter which you set. Okay, So it's very, very important to know about parameters because from your knowledge of parameters, you should be able to, for instance, power admin is a parameter in 3G which decides the number of people you will admit to use power in 3G. So you must have knowledge of parameters and to know when to set parameters. Normally, when we are working on network, you don't just go about changing parameters because the operator and whoever you're working for must have there's a baseline agreement which is SLA, service line agreement, which involves that there are parameters you have to set on the network. Your decision to change parameters will need approval from the operators. So, but you have some parameters that you have rights to change. So, one of the things you should know as a KPI engineer is those parameters, to know when to change them, to know how to change them, and to know the exact value you can put them. You don't just go about changing parameters the way you want, and you need to learn about those parameters. Part of what we teach in our normal KPI training are all these things I'm mentioning. Okay. Okay, let's talk about number six, features. In features, there are some features you set. Mostly features are set on the if you're doing 2G, 2G have BSC, which is the controller for all those BTS sites. And when you set a feature on a particular BSC, the feature becomes common for all the sites or the cells under the BSC. Same thing for RNC. So features, when you set features on an RNC, it means every cell within the RNC will automatically align to the feature you have set. So it's your work as a KPI engineer to learn about these features. They are very, very important. You need to know features that you can set that will alter the behavior of cells in an RNC. For instance, I gave you this automatic neighbor relations, this feature in Ericsson feature. And these features varies from vendor to vendor. This is an Ericsson feature that will automatically make a 3G site to add a set neighbor based on some set measurement it makes. For instance, if it has measured that this site, this neighbor has a very good RSR, RSCP, or a very good ECI, ECNO, or ECIO. So it can decide to add this cell automatically. So if you enable this feature on an RNC, every cell under this RNC will automatically add a neighbor that has a very good coverage to it. So this is very, very important to know features. You also need to know about timers, especially for 2G KPI optimization. There are timers that are set in the network. For instance, you have different timers on the network. The timer start, and just like the name is, it means you are timing it and saying, this time this should happen and at this time it will end. Okay? You need to learn about timers. Very, very important for a KPI optimization engineer. Call flow, also very, very important. You need to learn about call flow for 2G, 3G, and whatever KPI because the call flow will give you an overview of how stages and processes and the algorithm for executing signaling and executing user data in the network. And you'll be able to say at this point if there is a failure, this is why it failed, and what was the initial stage before the failure. You'll be able to check it and check it properly. So, call flow is very important to learn. Okay. Nine, resources. Every network has its resources, which when I say resources, it means these resources can be extinguished or, in other words, can be used up by users. And one of the things we do in KPI optimization is to recommend for expansion, capacity expansion, if these resources are taken up. And we don't just rush up recommending for expansion. For instance, it's one thing I've seen so many KPI engineers do as an error to quickly say there should be an expansion. But if, for instance, you have a site here and you have another site here, and this site is congesting, the resource is congesting. Probably this site was down and the site got congestion, and probably there's an event taking up here that called for so many people to come together and congest this resource. You can't just say resource should be expanded. Have you checked for neighbor sites to see if they are all up? And have you monitored the trend for over a number of times for you to come up to the recommendation for resource expansion? But yeah, sometimes you can call for resource expansion if you find out that this resource has been congested for a number of time, and we don't have any option to say that to say users have increased at this location, and we have to increase resources. There are so many resources in the network, and part of which I've brought up very quick ones that are very, very common for expansion. You need to learn about resources. That's what we're saying. Okay, for you to be a good KPI engineer and to know when to recommend it. Okay, I want to talk about what we call correlation. Since this is a very big error for KPI engineers that have worked under me before, KPI engineer quickly checked a trend and decided that this is the problem of the solution. I mean, the problem of the problem, the network. To come and say the KPI is bad because of this so and so. No, sometimes you can have because I mean, for instance, let's talk about instability. Instability can cause maybe by I mean drops in the network, CS drop, core drops can be caused by instability. It can be caused by uplink, downlink, non-synchronization, improper synchronization, uplink, downlink, maybe hardware issues, or maybe there's a packet loss, and all these things, or maybe the site is overshooting, and you checked counters for these individual problems, and you find out that this cell is having issues in all these individual problems, and you come to the conclusion that you just come up and say this very particular issue is the cause of core drop. You need to do a correlation, and by correlation we use Excel sheet to check it, so that you'll be able to say, using the trend, when the call is dropping, this is the particular counter that is accumulating, and you'll be able to say this is exactly what is causing it. This correlation is very, 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 very important in decisions for saying this is a problem in the network, and it's very, very important. And I think um, every KPI engineer must know about this. So if you are a KPI engineer, you don't know about this. I'm sorry. For instance, this is a okay. This is not exactly what I want to show. Okay, so every engineer must know how to correlate. Okay, before you come to conclusion that this is exactly the problem with the network. Number 11, worst cells. It's very, very important. You need to know if you are assigned to monitor to optimize a particular RNC and or optimize a particular PSC. Under one RNC, you can have many cells under it. And if the RNC is just going down, you'll be able to check from the RNC which of the cells is contributing more to the degradation. So these cells that are contributing more are called the worst cells. And it is your work as a KPI engineer to always check for your worst cells and optimize your worst cells. When you optimize your worst cells, eventually your RNC is going to be okay, because your team lead or your manager is mostly looking from the level of the entire network, which is the RNC or BSC, or I mean entire network. It can be looking. He might be looking from the entire network. He might be looking from RNC level. He might be looking for BSC level. You might not be interested in chasing the individual cells, but your work as a KPI engineer, is to find which of the cell is contributing more and to tackle these cells, knowing fully well that if these cells become okay, then definitely the network is going to really improve. So you should be able to know how to check for what cell, check those counters that are contributing more for the degradation of the RNC. Very, very important. Very, very important to check. If you do not know how to check this, then you will not be able to improve your network very well. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one, which is number 12. Presentation stroke logic. One thing KPI engineers should always know how to do is to do your presentation very well and be able to defend what you present in terms of KPI, in terms of reporting. If you have come up to say this is the problem of a particular cell, you should be able to say why this is the problem of the cell. And you should be able to do a very good report. Very good. These are part of the things I teach people that KPI, how you have to do these presentations, how you have to make award-winning presentation of reports, and how you have to present proper logic. For instance, when I mentioned about correlations, yes, because if you say this is the problem, this is the solution, you should be able to defend why you recommended such solutions. If you have a problem and your recommendation is questionable, then it means you will not be able to defend it. And so it's very, very important that your presentation and your logic should be very, very important. Be very, very okay. Okay, 13. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know this is going to sound very, very interesting for those of you who are very good in drive test and analysis. If I should actually say, I would want to inform you that if you are a good drive test engineer and a good analyst, then you will be a very good KPI engineer. Because most of what we recommend are what we see on the field and how we and every analysis starts from your field experience. So drive test engineers, good analyst engineers, very are also going to be very, very good KPI optimization engineers. Okay, so one of the things you should know is how to do analysis and to do drive tests if you want to be a good KPI engineer. Okay, in my own case, I started from drive tests. I came to an analyst because before I became a KPI optimization, even as much as leading teams and managing projects under optimization. And so it's a very good, interesting thing to have all these skills when you come to optimization, KPI optimization. You find out your work becoming so easier and you'll be able to do properly normally. Okay, in optimization, there's always specialization, guys. Most times in projects, a 2G or KPI optimization is different from 3G KPI optimization, different from 4G KPI optimization. I know for most recruitment agencies, they would want you to know all of them. And that is why when I do my training on KPI optimization, I try to train people in all these skills 2G, 3G, 4G, or 5G. Although 5G, we are still trying to standardize our training on 5G, but 2G, 3G, 4G, we are experts in this already. And but in real-time projects, you're always assigned to be specialized in one technology, and so this is what you always have to know. So even when you train, I would suggest or recommend that you try to perfect your skill on a particular specialization, as this is what we always do when we go on real-time projects. Okay, number 15, monitoring. Is one thing to optimize and implement your recommendation, and it is another thing for you to make sure you monitor. Because if you don't monitor, you can bring down entire network based on your implementation. And This is a 100% KPI. For instance, over a time or date, let's say this is date, which is, and this is the KPI. Okay, and this is 90. Let's say, for instance, this is 90. This is 80, and this site was on 100 before. All of a sudden, there's a degradation to 80, and at this location, you optimized the network and you did implementation. You need to monitor every 30 minutes, 50 minutes. Normally, the reporting period, which is the ROP, comes every 15 minutes. So statistical data are updated every 50 minutes. And you need to check and make sure you monitor the network. What if after your implementation of a particular recommendation parameter change, it goes from 80% down and spiral down? So you'll be able to reverse what you implemented at this location. Okay? If you don't monitor, you need to monitor to check if there's actually improvement. And one thing I've found so many KPI engineers make as a mistake is to finish up their implementation and go home. Some of the implementation they do in the night, maybe towards evening before the close of business, and they just left the office and told for them to come the next morning to find out that they finished. The network has been degrading seriously. So if you do implementation in the evening, then I'm sorry, you need to on overtime to check what you implemented and monitor. Okay, so constant monitoring of your implementation is very very important, guys. If you don't do this, you will not make up for a good optimization engineer. Finally, um, it's very very important for every KPI optimization engineer to keep track of what he's doing. You need to keep track of your daily routine work. If you don't keep track of your daily routine work, you will not be able to know your achievements and your forecast. So you need to check what you've done, what you are going to do, and then to put to put up a tracker is it's very 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 simple. I mean, if you come over, you can easily make up your tracker on daily basis and say, okay, if I want to put up, I just let me just put up a simple tracker. Let us say on my daily day, I put up dates in my tracker, date of work, issue. You can call it issue. You can call it problem. Is for yourself. You can call it. You can say recommendation. Recommendation. Um, you can say challenges. You can put challenges before you now say status. Okay. So this is challenges. Challenges. Before you now put status. A closed status has to do with saying if it is closed or open. Okay, so you can keep track of the of your daily work. So you can even add for which cell this problem occurred. Okay, so this is the name of the cell. You have issues G 0022 C, uh, maybe G depending on the naming, naming convention for the operator. These dates, today's date, 7th of April, 7th April 2022. Okay, and then what is the problem I saw on this site, on this cell? This cell might be a wall cell. Okay, okay, DCR, CSDCR for 3G, CSDCR. Okay, what was the? This is the problem. Okay, okay, let's put up RCA. RCA is root cause analysis. What was the reason for this? The problem was as a result of instability. And what was the suggestion based on the instability of the cell? Hardware issues, fixed hardware issue, which caused alarm on the site. Okay, Because then when you talk about hardware issues, causes alarm, there's always alarm you need to check. Okay. Um, what's the problem with this side? Any challenges? No. Maybe there's a challenges, but none. Okay. A very good thing you can also add is timeline. Okay. You can put up a timeline when you think you can resolve this issue. My timeline is 8th of April. 8th April. Okay. 8th April and 8th April 2022. And what is my status here? Open. Open. Okay. Open. So if by tomorrow I do an update here, all right. Sometimes you can also put aging. What? Yeah, aging, so that you know how many days this has been. Aging in days. Days. Aging in days. So aging for this is one day. If after tomorrow is not resolved, you put 2 days. You update your timeline. And if it's fixed, it's closed. How do you know if it is fixed? You go and do a trend for the site and check if it's fixed. It's very simple. That's why you have to learn Excel skill. All right, guys. So these are 16 things. I want to give you an extra bonus point, which I've mentioned earlier. That is, every KPI engineer must learn how to check alarm. Okay. This alarm system is part of what I teach, like KPI optimization. Is it a critical alarm? Is it a major alarm? Is it a minor alarm? You have to check all this. This part of analysis skill. All right, guys. So these are important points you need to know. And I made myself Mr. Jude. You can reach me from this phone number. You can register. Go to my. If you want me to contact. If you want to WhatsApp me, you can chat me up here. I train people on KPI. I train people on. I have three modules for my training. The three modules I use in my training. First of all, I teach people fundamentals. For those who are just coming in to telecoms, I teach you the fundamentals. Secondly, I teach people drive test, and analysis. Okay, log analysis, and I also teach people KPI. And they are all very interesting. I have a lot of people who have trained before, and they are all moving higher and higher on telecoms. I can easily share my training outline with you if you want to learn, if you want to know more. Once you WhatsApp me on my phone number, I will share my outline with you, and I can train you from everywhere. Train people in Somalia, train people in Iraq, train people in US, and train people in so many locations of this world. I train from my locations. For practical classes, also I guide you in your practical analysis classes, um, and so many things you want to learn so that you can perfect your skill. Also, another bonus, you can take our. You can also give me your. You come over here to register your details, and you'll be invited on some free training via Zoom network. Okay. All we want to do is to make sure you're prospering in your career as far as telecom is concerned. If you have someone you want to bring into telecoms, you can contact me. Just chat me up. I'm going to make sure I, I train that person very well. I'm going to also do videos on my training topics, motivational topics, and so many other things you would want to know. Guys, it's been a while, and thank you for being here. And I want you to share my videos to other people to know and to learn. Thank you very much for coming here. God bless you.